Hi guys, welcome to Corona specific series by LDFS. I am Dr. Lakshmy. In my earlier few videos, we had discussed about how we can reduce our rent, how to go about the discussion with the landlord, what groundworks are required before that, everything about it. I hope you have gone through that videos. If you haven't, kindly check out our YouTube channel so you can watch it and you can benefit from it. If you have gone through it and you had a discussion with your owner, we would love to know how it went, what did he say, did he agree? We would love to know everything about it. Kindly comment below and let us know what was your feedback. One thing which this pandemic has taught us is the importance of emergency fund. Many of the dentists have told us that either they had an emergency fund but it wasn't enough, they had planned it for some amount, but it was far less from what it was required during the pandemic, or they haven't even planned the emergency fund, they didn't have anything like that. So this pandemic has taught us a big lesson about the importance of emergency fund. In today's video and my future videos, we will be discussing everything about emergency fund, like what is emergency fund, how to create it, how much is required in the emergency fund, and why is it required, everything about it. Stay tuned to know more about it. Before going into the details of emergency fund, kindly like and subscribe us and share to maximum people. Kindly share to your juniors who are just starting the clinic or who have just started the clinic. They'll benefit the maximum from these videos. We want to help our community as much as possible. Kindly help us achieve that. Let's start our today's video by understanding what is an emergency fund. So emergency fund is liquid funds which can be used by businesses when they need them in case of an emergency, and these reserves should not be used for day-to-day operations. Now, let us understand further this by splitting it into two parts. Let's discuss about what do we mean by liquid funds first. Liquid funds means that fund which you have kept aside, which you can take out at any given point of time, irrespective of what day it is or what time it is. It should be easily accessible. It should not be in some fund or some firm where you have to go physically and withdraw it. Because let's take an example, like in the case of lockdown, the first wave, everything was shut. So at that time, if you had need to take out that cash from your emergency fund for your clinic, for your employee's salary, anything, for that expenses, if you had to physically go somewhere and take it out, it would have been difficult. But if you had an online access, which can be withdrawn within at least 1 day, that would be something known as liquid fund. So there are different kind of investments which you can do, but always remember it should be liquid fund. Emergency fund should be kept in some liquid fund which can be easily withdrawn, easy access should be there so that you can take out that money at the time of emergency. Because at the time of emergency, maybe you won't be able to physically go there because maybe it was the emergency was a pandemic or it was a medical emergency or health emergency in your family, something like that. But for that, it should have an easy access for you. Online access should be there. So all these things should be there. These are the things which help us withdraw that money whenever emergency comes. So the like in some funds and all, when you invest, when you withdraw that cash, it gets credited to your account after 1 or 2 days. That should not be there. These funds should be something like when you can withdraw it within 1 day itself, you should get that money in your account. Or rather, if it's in hours, superb. But if it's not in hours, at least 1 day. That should be the meaning, or that should be actually the target of the liquid funds. And in those kind of funds, we should keep the emergency fund. So emergency fund is a type of liquid fund, or rather you can keep in some liquid fund which you can take out easily. So that is the first part of what do we mean by emergency fund. Now let's proceed to the second part. So emergency fund are the liquid funds which can be used by businesses in case of an emergency. These reserves should not be used in day-to-day operations. Let's concentrate on the day-to-day operations now. Let me give you an example in this. Imagine in the month of January, I'm just taking an example. In the month of January, you had less number of patients. So the income from your clinic was less. But you had some pending lab bills which had to be cleared by January itself. It was long pending and you had to clear it by 31st. But in that January month, you didn't have that much income. So what you did was to compensate for that, you took money from your emergency fund and you paid that bill. And you thought you'll just refill that money later. These kind of transactions is something which should be avoided, because emergency funds are something which is kept aside only in case of actual emergencies like health or medical or pandemic or something like that, which is not under your control. It is not a buffer money which you can use for your day-to-day operations or day-to-day or monthly expenses in your clinic. Ups and downs in businesses happen, but that should not be compensated with the emergency fund. So we have to make it clear in mind that emergency fund is something which is kept only for emergencies and not it is not a buffer money which is kept aside. In fact, when I started my clinic, I had kept aside the emergency fund, but the problem was whenever there were ups and downs, and usually in the starting phase, starting 1 year, there will be a lot of ups and downs in your clinic. Some months will be very good, some months will be not so great. At that time, I had used that emergency fund money to compensate for my every month expenses. But that is ideally wrong. I later on understood that and then corrected myself. But only because of that, I didn't use it after, maybe 1 year or something. I didn't use the emergency fund at all for compensating for my day-to-day expenses. Now, that was useful because at the time of pandemic, when the actual emergency happened, I had that emergency fund in my account, so I wasn't worried about how to pay the employees' salary or the rent and all those things. So that kind of comfort only came because I didn't use that money in the day-to-day expenses and thought of refilling it later on. So these emergency funds should not be used on day-to-day operations. Now let's combine together. Emergency fund are the liquid funds which can be used by the businesses in case of an emergency, and these reserves should not be used for day-to-day expenses. I hope I'm clear and I hope you all understood what you mean by emergency fund. I hope you liked today's video. In my future videos, we will be sharing about how to calculate how much emergency fund is required for your clinic, how to create it, and what are the pros and cons of having an emergency fund. We'll be discussing everything about emergency fund in my future videos. Kindly like, share, and subscribe, and send us a hi on this number. We'll add you to our WhatsApp list, and we'll be sending you whenever we are releasing some videos online. We will be sending you first on your WhatsApp. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time, bye.